scent hit me first: warm engine metal, wax, and a faint trace of tire rubber. It was the comforting smell I'd grown used to after years of owning a machine like mine. Every morning, the garage felt like its own small sanctuary. My Lamborghini Huracan rested there like a sleeping beast, sleek, lethal, and perfectly engineered. Midnight blue paint that looked almost black in low light, curves sharper than a switchblade, and the kind of quiet menace only a naturally aspirated V10 could carry. But that morning, when I lifted the garage door, the sanctuary felt like a crime scene. I stopped halfway through the motion of raising the door, frozen in the doorway like someone had cut the power to my body, my breath locked in my chest, my pupils thinned to sharp pinpoints, my mind emptied. The windshield was a spiderweb of destruction, cracks spreading like frozen lightning across every inch of the glass, the hood cratered, not dented, caved, deep impacts, each one deliberate, like someone had swung with full force. Both side mirrors dangled by their wires, limp and pathetic. The passenger door was twisted outward, warped so badly it looked like a blown-out bunker door. The car looked like it had survived a riot or a battlefield. My first instinct was denial. My brain tried to convince itself I was seeing shadows, reflections, tricks of the early morning light. Then I stepped closer. Metal crunched under my boot. Glass shards, hundreds of them. A piece of something pink caught my eye, a tiny fleck, barely bigger than a grain of rice, stuck to a jagged piece of windshield glass. I crouched, picked it up and held it between my fingers. Pink nail polish. A very specific shade, loud, obnoxious, like bubblegum had melted under the sun. A shade I'd seen too many times on one particular set of hands tapping against a clipboard, wagging in disapproval, pointing at violations she made up on the spot. Helena Crow. And just like that, something cold and ancient stirred inside me, a feeling I hadn't felt since a different lifetime. A lifetime spent in uniform in places where danger had a face, a voice, and a heartbeat. This wasn't vandalism, this was personal. I forced myself to breathe and pulled out my phone with steady hands. Old training kicked in. Don't react emotionally. Observe, document, assess. The security feed loaded. 3 cameras covered the driveway and garage. I scrubbed through the timeline until I reached 2:07 a.m. There she was. Clear as day in the infrared, Helena Crow, the self-appointed queen of Maple Ridge's HOA, marching up my driveway with a sledgehammer on her shoulder. She wore a pale pink cardigan, her blonde-gray bob tied back tightly, and that perpetually offended expression like the world existed solely to disappoint her. I didn't hear anything on the footage, but I imagined the metallic echo of that hammer against steel, glass, and carbon fiber. She'd taken her time, 20 minutes of attack, 20 minutes of pure obsession. The footage ended with her stepping out of the garage, breathing heavy, brushing her hair back, and smiling. A smile that told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about rules or property values, this was hatred. I should have felt angry, furious, violated, but instead, a strange icy calm washed over me, calmer than I had any right to be. Calm like the moments before a breach, when every cell in your body prepares without panic. That part of me had been dormant for a decade. Helena woke it up with a hammer. I called 911. My voice was stable, controlled, almost casual. The dispatcher assured me officers would arrive shortly and advised me not to confront anyone. Confrontation. At this point, confrontation was the last thing I wanted. I wanted evidence, process, precision. While I waited, I took more photos. I cataloged every angle of damage. I checked the garage door, forced open, not surprising. Last year, the HOA had mandated that homeowners provide a spare key for emergency entry. I'd handed mine over to the board in good faith. I didn't know then that the wrong hands had taken it. Ranger padded into the garage behind me, my German Shepherd, 3 years old and trained well enough to understand the difference between calm and crisis. He sniffed the air, ears forward, tail stiff. A low whine escaped him, the canine version of, "Something's wrong." "Yeah, bud, I see it too." The police arrived 20 minutes later, red and blue lights splashing across my ruined car. Officer Blake Rowan stepped out first, a tall, lean man with steady eyes who'd worked the area for years. He was known for being fair, objective, and unflappable. His jaw tensed the second he saw the damage. "Hell," he muttered, stepping closer. "This wasn't random." "No," I said, "it wasn't." He circled the car slowly. "Someone really went after you." "I know who," I replied, handing him my phone with the footage already pulled up. He watched in silence, expression unreadable, but when the hammer came down for the 4th, 5th, 6th time, he exhaled sharply through his nose. "That's Helena, all right," he sighed. "I've responded to calls because of her before. Noise complaints, lawn disputes, the usual HOA drama. But this is felony level. I said she left nail polish behind. I handed him the tiny fleck. He nodded. We'll send a unit to pick her up after I get your statement. Can we have a little fun first? He asked suddenly. I blinked. Fun? He held up his department-issued audio recorder. Sometimes people dig their own holes faster when they don't know someone's listening. Ah, the phone call trick. I dialed Helena's number, placed it on speaker, and waited. She answered after 3 rings, her voice already irritated. What do you want, Marcus? It's too early for your nonsense. Someone destroyed my car last night, I said evenly. Do you know anything about it? Silence. Then, why would I know anything about your show-off toy? You've been complaining about it for months, measuring my garage door time, writing fake violations, calling it a commercial-grade distraction. And, she snapped, maybe someone got tired of you flaunting your money while the rest of us live normal lives. Officer Rowan mouthed at, keep her talking. I continued, Helena, are you saying you destroyed my car? She scoffed, a harsh, brittle sound. You think you're so special. All that military ego, walking around like you're better than everyone. Good. I'm glad someone finally did something to that thing. I raised an eyebrow. So you're admitting? Of course I am, she snapped. You deserve it. You and that ridiculous... Rowan clicked a button on his recorder. Ms. Crow, this is Officer Rowan with the county police. You just confessed to felony vandalism. Officers are en route to your house. Please remain where you are. The line went dead so fast that Rowan almost laughed. She hung up, he said, tucking the recorder away. Classic. 20 minutes later, we drove down the street, squad car following behind. Helena stood on her porch in her pink sweater, arms crossed, fury radiating off her like heat waves. Her sledgehammer leaned against her railing like an accusation she dared anyone to question. When she saw me standing beside Rowan, her face twisted into something feral. This is harassment! He's framing me! She shrieked as officers approached her. Ma'am, Rowan said calmly, please turn around. She fought, she struggled, she cursed, she screamed. She said I was a menace, a show-off, unstable, a danger to society. Then she said the thing that sealed her fate in my mind forever. He thinks he's a hero because he wore a uniform. He's nothing. I work harder than him. I deserve the car he has. As they put her inside, she locked eyes with me and hissed, This isn't over, Marcus. You ruined my life, and I'm going to ruin yours. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her actions already spoke plenty. Later, after the officers left and the sun began rising, I stood alone in the garage staring at the destruction again. It still didn't feel real. These kinds of things happened in movies, not in neighborhoods with quiet streets, trimmed hedges, and HOA newsletters about summer barbecues. Ranger nudged my leg and sat calmly beside me. I rubbed his head. We're not dealing with a rational person, we knew that. But I also knew something else, something darker. People like Helena don't lose gracefully, they don't step down, they escalate. As the morning quiet settled in, a single thought lingered in my mind like a warning shot. If she could do this to a car, what else was she capable of? And what would she come for next? I didn't have an answer, not yet, but I had a feeling I was going to find out. She blamed me for destroying her life, but I had no clue just how far she was willing to go to destroy mine.
The street looked different the morning after the arrest. Not in any obvious way, no police tape, no crime scene markers, but in the subtle ways that make your instincts twitch. Curtains stayed closed a second longer. Neighbors who usually waved now hovered near their mailboxes with hesitant smiles. 2 teenagers on bikes whispered when they rode past my driveway, casting glances at the shattered remains inside the garage. News had spread faster than wildfire on dry grass. I didn't care about gossip. I cared about the truth. That someone I had once dismissed as a nuisance had turned into something far more dangerous, and judging by her last words, I knew she wasn't finished. But that morning I forced myself into routine. Routine is how you keep your mind from spiraling. Routine is what kept me alive in places with no stability. I fed Ranger, brewed coffee, checked the house perimeter, and filled out the insurance paperwork. At noon, I got a call. Mr. Reed, a young voice said. This is Evan Drake, your USAA claims adjuster. Heard about the, incident? That pause told me everything. Even the insurance guy had heard. I'll be there in 20 minutes, and, from what I saw in the report, it'll probably take more than one visit. He wasn't kidding. When he arrived, he froze in the garage doorway. Holy! He stopped himself. I've handled hurricanes, floods, deer impacts. But this? Wow, this is targeted. I just nodded. He walked around the car slowly, shaking his head, taking photos from every angle. She must have hated this thing with a passion. She hated that I owned it, I corrected quietly. Envy does weird things to people. He wasn't wrong. After he left, I sat outside on the porch with Ranger, watching the street, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Something in my gut said Helena wouldn't stay quiet, even behind bars. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, around 7 p.m., a familiar knock landed on my door. Not aggressive, just weary. When I opened it, Rick Halstead, the HOA president, stood there, tall, silver-haired, and looking like he'd aged 10 years in one night. "Marcus," he said softly. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside to let him in. Ranger sniffed his leg, then plopped down beside the couch. Rick removed his cap and rubbed his forehead. "I owe you an apology." I said, "You don't. You didn't swing the hammer." "No," he murmured, sinking into a chair, "but I let her stay on the board long after she should have been removed. I kept hoping she'd calm down. Instead, she got worse, and we let her get worse." I studied him. His guilt was genuine. I said, "She fooled a lot of people." He shook his head. "We ignored the red flags. That's on us." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet. "This is an emergency motion signed by the entire board. Effective immediately, Helena Crow is suspended from all HOA duties." I stared at the paper. "Suspended?" "Marcus," he sighed, "we can't fully remove her until a formal board vote. Bureaucracy. But after what she did, that vote will be unanimous." He hesitated. "However, she's already contacted a lawyer." I stiffened. "A lawyer?" "She's claiming emotional distress, says you provoked her." I stared at him in disbelief before letting out a cold laugh. "She vandalized my car with a damn sledgehammer." "I know," Rick said quickly, hands raised. "The footage clears you completely, but she's building a narrative. Says you intimidated her, claims the HOA discriminated against her." "Over what?" She's calling herself a targeted single homeowner." Rick actually air quoted it. Helena's tactic was obvious. Paint herself a victim. Typical of people driven by envy. They build a reality where they're oppressed by the success of others. Rick stood. "We'll fix this, I promise. Just keep your guard up." When he left, the air felt heavier. I reviewed my cameras again before bed. The footage was clean. No movement. No suspicious activity. Still, I kept Ranger inside and locked every window. Something told me this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I slept lightly. Dreams of broken glass and swinging hammers, interrupted by faint echoes of Helena's voice. 2 days later, the first real sign appeared. Not from Helena, but from the people she'd been manipulating. I was in the driveway testing my new security angle when a woman approached, arms folded tightly, jaw clenched. Her name was Caroline Porter, one of my neighbors. Normally friendly, she and her husband often waved when I walked Ranger, but today her expression was stiff. "Marcus," she said, stopping at the edge of my driveway, "we need to talk." "Sure," I said cautiously. "What's going on?" "I heard things," she began, "about what happened with Helena." "Like what?" "That she said you threatened her before she had her episode." Interesting word choice. She told people you scared her, that you used your military background to intimidate her. My jaw tightened. "She attacked my car on camera." "I know," she said quickly. "I saw the video online." Online. Of course. Someone had leaked the footage. Caroline lowered her voice. "Look, Marcus, I'm not accusing you. But Helena's been spreading rumors for months, saying you run a business out of your garage, that you're unstable, that your dog is dangerous. Some people believe her." I looked at Ranger, tail wagging, tongue out, clearly pleased someone was giving him attention. Real menace, that one. I exhaled. "Caroline, I've been patient as a human being can be." "I'm not blaming you," she insisted. I want you to know what's being said." She walked off, leaving me standing in the driveway with a bitter taste in my mouth. Helena's lies were spreading like oil across water, slow at first, but impossible to contain once the sheen became visible. That afternoon, I received another visitor. Tanya Morales, the most level-headed member of the HOA board, showed up unannounced. She stood at my door with an expression that was half apology, half warning. "I'm not staying long," she said. "I just needed to tell you something." I gestured for her to speak. "Helena contacted the HOA's insurance provider. She's telling them you are a liability risk, that you're aggressive, that Ranger is aggressive, that your driving habits are dangerous." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Good God." She said, "She's trying to create a trail, something to use later in court." "She already confessed on tape," I reminded her. Tanya shook her head. "People like Helena don't care about truth, they care about perception." "Are you here to tell me to stay calm, stay calm?" She took a breath. "I'm here to tell you to be careful. She's unraveling, and people like Helena, they don't go quietly." No kidding. When she left, the cul-de-sac was quiet again. Too quiet. Ranger paced near the window, ears perked. He sensed something brewing behind the stillness, something electric and sharp. Around sunset, I took him for a walk. The air smelled like cut grass and warm pavement. Kids rode scooters, sprinklers clicked rhythmically, a normal suburban evening. But I felt eyes, curtains shifting, shadows that lingered a second longer, and halfway down the street, a shape moved behind Helena's blinds. Her house sat dark, but she was there, watching, always watching. Ranger let out a low growl, not aggressive, just uneasy. I tightened the leash. "Yep, I see it too." Over the next week, Helena escalated from visible presence to something more cunning. 3 violation letters arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten, unsigned. One claimed I played music too loudly at 11 p.m. Another accused Ranger of aggressive staring. The third insisted garage doors must remain closed at all times, which wasn't real. I chuckled darkly. Only one person in the neighborhood would invent a rule about how long a garage door stayed open. I called Rick again. "Marcus," he groaned, "she's suspended. She has no authority." "Then who's writing these?" He sighed. "Who do you think?" He came over the next day to apologize and help me document everything. While reviewing footage, I noticed something odd around 2:47 a.m. the previous night. A silhouette outside my fence line. Too far to identify. Not moving like a jogger or dog walker. Slow. Deliberate. I zoomed in. The shape paused at the gate. Then disappeared. A second later, the camera flickered. Static. Then resumed. "Maybe power surge?" Rick said. "Maybe. But I'd lived through worse places."
Ranger barked twice, short, sharp, alert, the kind of bark he only used when something didn't belong. I was in the kitchen fixing a loose hinge on one of the cabinet doors when the motion alert buzzed on my phone. Another flicker, another shadow. This one wasn't near the fence. It was at my mailbox. I froze for half a second and opened the live camera feed. The video showed a figure crouched low, flashlight gripped between their teeth, hands fiddling with something near the mailbox post. They were wearing a hoodie pulled low, making it hard to see a face. It wasn't Helena. This person was taller, thinner, moving differently, more jittery, more frantic. What the hell? Before I could step outside, the figure bolted across the street, disappearing between the houses. Ranger growled, pacing between the door and the window. I checked the mailbox. Another note. Folded once, crisp, precise. No envelope. Inside, the same frantic handwriting as before. "You can't hide behind cameras. She knows." I didn't know who wrote it, but I knew exactly who she was. For the next 2 days, things got quiet. Too quiet. No notes, no shadows, no glimpses of Helena's curtains twitching like paranoid eyelids. Even the HOA group chat went dead. People avoided posting anything that could trigger another tsunami of arguments. Everyone in Maple Ridge Estates knew something was winding up. They weren't sure what, but they felt it, and so did I. The quiet felt like foam on the surface of a storm. I spent those days checking cameras, tightening locks, and reinforcing the weak spots around the house. Old habits from a career where complacency got people killed. Ranger stayed close, ears perked, pacing more than usual. By Thursday morning, I found out why he was restless. It happened when I stepped outside to retrieve a package. I heard footsteps behind me, fast, crunching along the gravel. I turned, ready to block or counter, but instead found Helena Crow herself at the bottom of my driveway. She looked worse than I'd ever seen her. Hair a tangled mess, dark circles carved under her eyes, cardigan wrinkled like she'd slept in a chair for days. She clutched a manila folder so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Marcus Reed," she hissed.
I didn't respond, not until I assessed her hands, her stance, her proximity. She lifted the folder and pointed it at me. "You destroyed my life," Ranger growled, taking one step forward until he stood between us. She flinched, then sneered at him. "That mud is a menace." "Step back from my property, Helena," I said, voice steady. "I'm warning you." "Oh, you know all about your warnings, your threats, your intimidation. You think you're a hero because you have that car, that house, that dog, that uniform you never shut up about?" I raised a brow. "I never talk about my service." "Exactly," she barked. "You just expect everyone to respect you without saying anything." This woman was unraveling by the second. She thrust the folder toward me again. "I filed a complaint with the county mediation office. You're going to be investigated for harassment, and when they see how unstable you really are—" "Helena," I interrupted calmly, "you're trespassing." "You won't silence me," she shrieked. "You and your precious cameras and your perfect life. You think you're untouchable, but you're not. You're a bully." The irony didn't escape me. I stayed still, calculated. Ranger sensed the tension, pressing against my leg protectively. Helena took a shaky breath. "You're going to pay for humiliating me." "How?" I asked softly. "By spreading lies?" Her lips curled. "By telling the truth." Then she stormed off down the street, muttering to herself, hugging the folder to her chest like a manifesto. I didn't pursue her, didn't shout, didn't record. I didn't need to. The entire encounter was already captured by the camera above the garage. Audio, video, every threat. I filed it immediately, because a woman on the edge doesn't retreat, she detonates. Later that afternoon, Rick Halstead appeared again, this time with Tanya Morales and George Whitman in tow. They looked grim, determined, like soldiers marching into a meeting they didn't want to attend. "We just met with Helena's lawyer," Rick said, stepping into my living room. "It wasn't pretty." Tanya nodded. "She's accusing the HOA of coordinated harassment. Says she psychologically targeted her because she's a single woman." George snorted. "She's targeting herself with that temper." Rick glared at him. George shrugged. They sat down, each with a mix of exhaustion and embarrassment. Rick cleared his throat. "Marcus, we're doing everything we can to remove her from the board permanently. The vote is scheduled for next Tuesday." "You can't do it sooner?" I asked. "We can't get quorum until then," Tanya said. "People are intimidated." George folded his arms. "She's been calling neighbors, screaming at them, threatening legal action. Folks are scared of her." Tanya leaned forward. "She's also telling everyone that you punched her during the arrest, that you assaulted her, that she's the victim." I closed my eyes, just for a moment. Just long enough to let the frustration settle into something colder and more manageable. "I have the footage," I said. "Every second of it." "We know," Rick replied. "And it's the only thing keeping her from filing a restraining order against you." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "A restraining order?" I repeated. "Against the man she attacked twice?" Tanya sighed. "Marcus, people like Helena don't think logically." That was the understatement of the year. Before they left, Rick paused at the door. "Just be careful. She's not stable." He didn't need to tell me twice. The next few days blurred into each other. More whispered conversations, more sideways glances, more nervous neighbors avoiding driveways, front yards, and walking trails. The neighborhood itself seemed to recoil from her presence. Ranger remained restless. Every time the mail truck passed, he barked. Every time a car slowed down near the house, he trotted to the door. He could smell something coming. So could I. On Monday morning, just before dawn, I heard the metallic rattle of the side gate. Not a breeze, not a raccoon. This was precise, intentional. I checked the camera feed on my phone. There was no glitch this time. A figure moved slowly along the perimeter of my yard, hood up, shoulders tense, pausing every few feet like they were measuring something. Same person as before, the shadow that wasn't Helena. Something in their hand glinted under the motion light. A key. My gut clenched. I checked the drawer where I kept my spare keys, house, shed, garage. One was missing. No way. I replayed old footage, scanning days, weeks. Then I saw it. Last week, during her meltdown at my driveway, Helena had dropped something shiny near the curb. I thought it was trash. It wasn't. It was my garage key. The one I'd given the HOA last year. So Helena wasn't alone. Someone else had it now. Someone working with her. Or someone she manipulated. It didn't matter which. What mattered was that there were now two people circling my house. Two threats. Two unstable individuals feeding off each other's madness. I called Officer Rowan immediately. "Marcus," he said, voice shifting instantly into alert mode. "Stay inside, keep Ranger with you. Patrol will be in the area within 10. "This isn't Helena," I said. "This is someone else, someone with a key." There was a long pause. Say that again? They have one of my keys, one of the HOA copies. Lock everything, he ordered. We're on our way. I didn't wait. I locked every door, checked every window, armed the silent alarm, pulled the garage deadbolts. Ranger hovered beside me, hackles raised. Minutes later, I heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Crunching along the gravel outside the garage door. Ranger growled, deep and primal. The handle jiggled. Another jiggle. Then, a sharp click. Someone was testing each lock one at a time like they were learning the rhythm of the house. I didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't make a sound. Because whoever it was, they weren't rushing. They weren't panicked. They were patient. Calm. That was worse. Then came the worst sound of all. A woman's voice, soft, trembling but unmistakable. Don't worry, I know how to get in. Helena. She wasn't alone. Two shadows moved past the side window. Two sets of footsteps. Two figures coming for my house. Coming for me. And I realized something with absolute clarity. This wasn't about the car anymore. This wasn't even about the HOA. This was personal. This was obsession. This was the moment everything snapped in her mind. As the footsteps circled toward the back door, my phone buzzed. Rowan, unit arriving. Stay inside. But the back door handle began to turn before I could even exhale. They were already here. And they weren't leaving until something broke. The moment that back door handle turned, I knew this wasn't vandalism anymore. This was survival. And Helena hadn't come alone. The moment the back door handle twitched, Ranger braced himself, shoulders tight, ears up, a low vibration rumbling in his chest. He didn't bark, he didn't lunge. He waited. Trained patience, controlled readiness, the kind of instinct you can't fake. I stepped back into the hallway, silent, my hand hovering near the drawer where the flashlight and pepper spray sat. Not a weapon, not a threat, just tools to buy seconds if I needed them. Old training whispered in my head, reminding me to stay calm, stay aware, and stay behind cover. The door handle turned again. A soft metallic click followed. Then a whispered voice, barely audible through the door. Push harder, he's probably asleep. Helena. And the second voice, higher, younger, shook so badly that their words came out in tremors. I don't think we should be here. What if he... Quiet, Helena hissed. You're already in this. Don't you dare back out now. So that was it. She wasn't recruiting an accomplice. She was blackmailing someone. I peeked around the kitchen doorway, staying out of line of sight. The door jostled harder, a key slid into the bottom lock. It didn't turn all the way. Thankfully, I'd changed that lower bolt 2 days ago. But the top latch strained. Ranger's breathing grew sharper. Just then, a faint echo of distant tires rolled across the street. Helena froze. Not because she noticed the noise, but because she heard it before. Police. I recognized the way her shadow stiffened, the way her voice shifted into panic. Not now, she muttered. We were supposed to have more time. Heavy stoopfoots approached my back fence, fast, confident, not stumbling or whispering. Officer Rowan's voice carried across the yard. Police, step away from the property! The panic on the other side of the door was instant. A shuffle, a curse, the sharp gasp, then retreating footsteps pounding across the patio. I looked through the narrow side window. 2 figures bolted through the garden. Helena in her wrinkled pink sweater, hair frayed, and beside her a tall, jittery young man I recognized instantly. Trevor Madsen, 21, college kid, lived 2 houses down, quiet, always looked tired, nervous, and hyper-aware of every conversation. His mother once mentioned he struggled with anxiety. And Helena, the queen of manipulation, had sunk her claws into him. As the patrol car swung into my driveway, lights flashing silently, Ranger barked once, sharp, triumphant. Rowan and 2 additional officers rushed toward the backyard. I opened the sliding door and stepped out with my hands visible. They ran toward the north hedge, I said. Both of them. We'll get them, Rowan replied. Stay with your dog. We'll sweep the perimeter. I watched them disappear around the corner, radios crackling, boots pounding. For 10 tense minutes, the neighborhood echoed with shouts, instructions, and the rustle of officers moving through shrubs and fences. Then, silence, followed by Rowan's voice over the radio. We've got the kid. Helena fled toward the creek path. Unit 2 is following. 5 minutes later, 2 officers escorted Trevor into my driveway. He looked pale, shaking so violently that his hoodie sleeves fluttered. His eyes didn't meet mine. Rowan approached me. Trevor says she pressured him, made him believe you were dangerous, told him she was protecting the neighborhood. I folded my arms. She used him. Manipulated is the word he used, Rowan exhaled. He's scared out of his mind, claimed she told him you were planning to harm her. I stared at Trevor. Does he still believe that? Trevor shook his head quickly. No, she just kept showing up at my house, saying she needed help, saying everyone was against her, saying you. He broke off, tears filling his eyes. Rowan stepped in. Marcus, he's cooperating. We'll take his statement. What about Helena? I asked. Still searching, but she's on foot and panicked. We'll find her. He paused. But she wasn't trying to vandalize your house this time. I felt a cold ripple through my spine. Then what was she doing? He exchanged a look with the other officer. She was trying to plant evidence. I blinked. Evidence of what? Domestic disturbance, Rowan replied. She brought audio recordings, fabricated, wanted to leave them inside your house, claimed she was collecting proof before filing a restraining order. My stomach tightened. She wasn't attacking me physically. She was attacking my life, my future, my record. People like her didn't need weapons. They used lies. After the officers took Trevor away, the night settled into a heavy stillness. Ranger stayed glued to my side, pacing occasionally, sniffing the air as if expecting Helena to appear again. I checked all the locks, all the windows, all the cameras, and then, because I couldn't allow paranoia to take root, I sat on the floor beside Ranger and breathed until my pulse stopped racing. But peace didn't last. Around midnight, an alert buzzed again. Motion detected, far end of the backyard. I opened the live feed. Helena stood at the edge of the fence, partially illuminated by the soft glow of the solar lights. Her cardigan hung off one shoulder. Mud streaked her jeans, hair wild, chest heaving. She stared directly into the camera, not with fear, not with guilt, with hatred. Slowly, she raised her hand. Clutched within her fingers was something small, metallic, reflecting the light. A second key. She lifted it to her lips, kissed it, then dropped it into the grass. A deliberate gesture. A message, a warning. Then she whispered, just loud enough for the mic to pick up. You can't keep me locking me out. She backed away into the shadows and vanished. I didn't call Rowan, not immediately, because something about that moment told me Helena wasn't done running. She was setting the stage. For what, I didn't know yet, but I felt the shift, the escalation, the sharpening edge of desperation in her eyes. She wasn't planning her next move, she was planning her endgame. Ranger whined softly and pressed his head against my leg. I know, I muttered, staring at the empty camera frame. She's not stopping. I looked out into the dark yard where the key she dropped glimmered faintly. She wasn't testing me anymore. She was making promises, and I had no doubt she intended to keep them. By the time Helena dropped that key into my yard, I understood something chilling. She didn't want access to my house. She wanted control over my entire life. And her endgame hadn't even begun. Sunrise crawled across the neighborhood like nothing had happened the night before, but the air felt wrong. Thick, heavy, unsettled. Ranger sensed it before I did. He paced constantly, nose twitching at every sound, tail stiff like an antenna searching for danger. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Helena's face under the backyard lights, wild hair, mud-streaked clothes, and that horrifying calm when she dropped the second key. A promise, disguised as a threat. She'd been unraveling. Now, she was unhinged. By 7 a.m., I made the call to Officer Rowan. He saw last night's footage, he said without greeting. He sounded exhausted. We sent units through the creek path. No sign of her. She dropped another key, I said. She wants me to know she still has access. Not anymore, Rowan replied. We're issuing a warrant today. She crossed multiple lines. I wish that reassured me. It didn't. People like Helena didn't run because they were scared anymore. They ran because they had nothing left to lose. The HOA board arrived at my place around noon. Rick, Tanya, George, and unexpectedly 2 more members who'd stayed quiet until everything spun out of control. They walked in looking like a funeral procession. Rick sat heavily on the couch. Marcus, this has gotten bigger. How big? I asked. He slid a thick envelope across the table. She filed 12 complaints last night. Against you, against us, against the entire HOA. 12? I repeated. All false, George added, but she's not just accusing you of harassment now. She's accusing the HOA of embezzlement, discrimination, and abuse of power. I blinked slowly. You're kidding. I wish, muttered Rick. She submitted letters to the county clerk, the property management company, and even a local reporter. Of course she did. Chaos wasn't a byproduct for Helena. Chaos was the goal. Tanya leaned forward. Marcus, she's trying to destroy everything connected to you. The board, the HOA, the neighborhood, anyone who didn't take her side. George shook his head. She's lost it. She was already lost, I corrected softly. This is the fallout. Rick rubbed his face with both hands. We vote her out Tuesday. That's the earliest possible time. But, I echoed. But we received notice that she intends to attend the meeting. I almost laughed. She attacked my car, tried to break into my house, planted evidence, and now she wants to stroll into the HOA meeting like it's book club? Rick swallowed. She said she has proof of her claims. What proof? I asked sharply. Tanya answered. She claims she has recordings, photographs, witness statements. All fabricated, George said. But if she interrupts the meeting with theatrics, the county mediator may delay the vote. That was her strategy. Delay. Drag. Destroy. Not physically, but legally, socially, psychologically. A slow burn. Rick leaned forward. Marcus, what exactly did she say on your camera last night? I replayed the footage for them. Helena standing in the yard, whispering, You can't keep locking me out. Silence followed. Tanya whispered, She's obsessed. Not with the house, not with the HOA. Rick nodded grimly. With you. The room fell quiet because everyone knew what obsession did when it soured. Late that afternoon, while the board was still at my house, my doorbell rang. Ranger barked once, then twice. Different this time. Alert, but not alarmed. I checked the peephole. A woman stood on the porch, mid-40s, wringing her hands, eyes red from crying. Trevor's mother. I opened the door. Mrs. Madsen? She nodded quickly. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go. Tears welled in her eyes. Trevor told me everything. What she made him do. What she said about you. I'm terrified she'll come after him again. Trevor's cooperating with the police, I said gently. He'll be okay. She shook her head. You don't understand. She has been showing up at our house for weeks, standing on the sidewalk, watching, knocking late at night, telling Trevor he's the only one who truly understands her, manipulating him with threats and pity. That tracked perfectly. She used him as a pawn, I said quietly. Yes, and I hate her for it. Another tear slid down. Marcus, what if she comes back? I looked her in the eyes. She will. The truth landed between us like a stone. Not comforting, but real. Rick stepped forward. Mrs. Madsen, the HOA will support your family. We'll keep watch. We'll notify the police. She nodded shakily, thanked us all, and left. After she disappeared down the sidewalk, George muttered something I'd been thinking all along. This isn't about rules. This is a cult of one, and she's desperate to keep followers. Tanya added, Desperate people do the worst things. She wasn't wrong. By evening, the sky had darkened, the wind rising just enough to rustle the trees. Ranger stayed planted near the door, refusing to move more than a few feet from me. I should have felt tired. Instead, I felt sharp, focused, clear. Like the world had shifted into a familiar mode, one I hadn't used in years. At 9:14 p.m., another motion alert buzzed. This time not in the backyard, in the front. I opened the feed. A figure stood at the end of my driveway. Female. Still. Unmoving. Staring directly at the house. Helena. No frantic movements, no screaming, no pacing, no theatrics. Just stillness. And stillness is always more dangerous. Ranger growled, deep and low. She didn't move. Not an inch. Just stared, holding something pressed to her chest like a sacred item. I zoomed in. It wasn't a key. It was a thick binder. A binder stuffed full of papers, photos, printouts, and handwritten notes. Her proof. Her obsession organized into a manifesto. She lifted the binder slowly so the camera could see it. Then she mouthed something. I rewound, played it again, and again, until the words became clear. You brought this on yourself. She dropped the binder at the edge of the driveway, turned, and walked into the night without looking back. She didn't run, she didn't hide, she didn't even hurry. She moved like someone who just finished the first part of a plan, and wasn't afraid of the next step. I stared at the binder on the screen. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. And the worst part, I knew she wanted me to open it. The moment Helena left that binder at the edge of my driveway, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't her breaking point. This was her blueprint, and whatever she'd written inside wasn't just meant to ruin me. It was meant to destroy everything around me.
The binder sat at the end of my driveway like a trap disguised as a gift. Even through the live camera feed, it radiated something unsettling, a kind of manic energy pressed between sheets of paper. Ranger paced in front of the door, ears locked on the driveway as if the binder itself were breathing. I didn't rush to pick it up. I stood inside the hallway for a solid minute, breathing, letting the quiet settle. Then I stepped out with Ranger at my side, the night air cold enough to sting. The binder looked worse up close. Dozens of pages bulged out the sides. The plastic cover was cracked like someone had gripped it too hard. Handwritten words covered the outside in looping, frantic strokes. Evidence of his danger. For the community, for the courts, for the truth. The last line was underlined so violently it had torn the plastic. I picked it up carefully. It was heavier than it looked. Ranger pressed close as I took it inside and placed it on the dining table. I didn't sit immediately. I let the weight of the moment settle over me, let every instinct sharpen the way it did before entering a hostile building. Then I opened it. The first page nearly made me laugh, if the situation wasn't so dark. A printed photo of me walking Ranger. Helena had circled my hand in red and labeled it, "Aggressive grip indicates violent tendencies." I flipped to the next page. Another photo, me carrying groceries. This time she circled the muscles in my arm and wrote, "Uses physical intimidation to scare neighbors." Page after page contained photos of normal, everyday moments. Mowing the lawn, washing the car, jogging, talking to Rick. And every one of them had captions twisting reality into her own nightmare. She had documented me like a criminal. Not a single page was sane. The next section contained typed reports, all fabricated. Claims that I yelled at her from across the street, that Ranger lunged at her, that she overheard me threatening neighbors. All lies. But the detail was chilling. She had dates, times, descriptions, fake witness names, fake signatures, enough false structure to make a casual viewer pause. The deeper I read, the worse it got. Midway through the binder was a crude map of the neighborhood. Red dots marked houses she claimed I monitor. In reality, they were just camera angles. Blue arrows indicated possible escape routes I would take if confronted. She wasn't documenting my life. She was building a fantasy war. A war where she believed she was the hero and I was the villain. Near the back, I found the final section, handwritten notes. Pages and pages of her voice, her paranoia, her hatred poured in ink. He watches me. I feel him judging me. He pretends to be calm, but he's dangerous. He wants to destroy me. He stole what I deserved. He thinks he's special because he went to war. I will expose him before he hurts someone. I am the only one who sees the truth. Then the last page. The HOA meeting will end this, one way or another. I felt the temperature in my bloodstream drop. So that was it. Tuesday wasn't her meltdown. It was her battleground. I closed the binder, letting the weight of her obsession sink into the table. Ranger laid his head on my knee, sensing the shift inside me. There are moments in life where you feel the ground move beneath you. Not literally, but in a way that tells you something big has snapped. And as I sat there staring at that binder, I felt it. This wasn't about harassment anymore. This was about safety, about survival, about preventing something irreversible. The next morning, I brought the entire binder to Officer Rowan. He didn't speak for a full minute as he flipped through the pages. His jaw tightened. His breathing slowed. The air around him simmered with controlled anger. "This," he said finally, "isn't obsession. I know. This is delusion. I know. This is dangerous.
"I know," I repeated. He closed the binder and looked at me with a seriousness I'd only seen from officers on the brink of crisis response. "We're filing an emergency psychiatric evaluation request and an arrest warrant." My shoulders fell with relief. But Rowan held up a hand. "That doesn't guarantee she shows. If she thinks we're coming, she'll go into hiding." Of course she would. People like Helena always knew when consequences were closing in. Before I left, Rowan placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did everything right, Marcus, and we won't let her get to that HOA meeting." I nodded, but fear lingered. Not for myself, but for everyone around her. Because if she wasn't going to let the meeting happen without confrontation, she would force one. Tuesday arrived faster than I expected. The meeting room at the community center filled with tense, whispering neighbors. People kept checking the door, their phones, the windows. Everyone knew Helena could show up any moment. Rick and Tanya sat at the front table. George stood near the door, acting as unofficial security, even though he wasn't trained for it. I sat in the back, Ranger lying quietly at my feet. His presence was steadying, familiar, loyal. At 6:14 p.m., just as Rick began to call the meeting to order, the back door swung open. Helena stepped in. The room froze. But she didn't storm in. She didn't shout. She didn't wave her binder. She walked slowly, methodically, her eyes scanning every face like she was memorizing who was friend and who was foe. Her clothes were cleaner, but her hair still wild. She clutched the corners of her cardigan like a child clutching a blanket. Tanya whispered, "She wasn't supposed to be here." Rick cleared his throat. "Helena, the board has voted to suspend you." "No," she said softly. The entire room stiffened. Her voice wasn't screaming. It was calm. Too calm. "No," she repeated. "This meeting is about him." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. She stepped closer, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket, the last page of her binder. Her manifesto. "You all think he's the victim," she said, pointing a shaky finger at me. "But he's dangerous. He's manipulating you. He's been plotting against me for months, and you helped." Rick raised his hands. "Helena, that's not—" "Quiet," she snapped. Ranger growled. She stepped forward again, unhinged conviction burning in her eyes. "I warned you all. I warned everyone. He's the reason this neighborhood is falling apart. He wants control. He wants to get rid of me." I stood slowly. "Helena, you need help." Her head twitched violently. "No," she whispered. "I need justice." She reached into her cardigan pocket, and for a split second, the room inhaled as one. But she didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out another key, held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said, "proves he attacked me." I exhaled. Not in relief, in realization. She wasn't here to win. She was here to drag everyone into her spiral. Before she could continue, the door burst open. Officer Rowan stepped inside with 2 deputies. "Helena Crow, you're coming with us." Her eyes widened, not with fear, with betrayal. "You all set me up," she whispered. Rowan approached slowly. "Ma'am, please come with us. Nobody is here to hurt you." She clenched the key so tight her knuckles went bloodless. "I tried to warn you," she said to the room. "I tried." Then she looked at me, right at me. "You did this." I met her gaze not with anger, but with something she wasn't expecting. Pity. That broke her. She lunged. Not at me, at the binder